Thank you, and a formal welcome to Dr. Frederick for her first board meeting. We're glad to have you. Some technical issues with Mr. Harrell's presentation. He's working on that. Dr. Ritter, would you like to go ahead with the DESE Award?
Okay. For our performance last year, the district received the Distinction for Performance Award, which is awarded, I'll better stay on my points here. The Distinction in Performance Award is based on the level of performance the district achieves on its required annual performance report, that's the APR, the state's accreditation standards. To be awarded the status of distinction in performance, K-12 districts must meet at least 13 of 14 performance standards, including all 6 MAP standards. And the MAP standards, the SPS MAP, the following 12 performance standards are met, the 12 performance standards, 6 of 6 MAP standards, the ACT standard, advanced courses standard, career education courses standard, college placement standard, the career education placement standard, and the attendance rate standard. And so anyway, I just thought I'd bring this forward, and congratulations to all the staff and students and parents of Springfield Public Schools. So congratulations. Now, this may be the last year of this. It depends on MSIP 5 and how that proceeds or progresses. And, but if not, and if everything stays the same, we have another shot at it next year. So I want to thank you for this opportunity. Is Dr. Harrell ready now?
I think not yet.
He's not ready yet, okay.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ritter. Besides modifying the position of Dr. Harrell's report, do any board members have other modifications to the agenda? Good. Well, let's go on to my report. I have only good things to say in my brief 5-day tenure as board president. But I do want to first recognize, as you know, recognize some partners in education. These are businesses and organizations around town that help us do what we need to do for the kids. All Things Epicurean, the Boys and Girls Club of Springfield, Children's Choirs of Southwest Missouri, the Claymobile, Commercial Insurance Underwriters, Messiah Lutheran Church, the North Springfield Betterment Association, Parkview Christian Church, Seminole Baptist Temple, Southern Missouri Containers, Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce, Springfield Cardinals, Springfield Pottery, and Vogue Cleaners. So thanks to all these organizations who help out. And then to highlight our partners in education, we have a special guest tonight, and I think, Pam, you're going to make the introduction.
This month's Partner in Education presentation will be made by Julie Kudrina of Advantage Insurance Services, representing Horace Mann Insurance. Julie has served as a district partner since 2005 and is a strong advocate for Springfield Public Schools. While Julie has supported many activities for SPS over the years, most recently she assisted with promoting a matching funds grant available for teachers through a website called donorschoose.org. Nationally, her company donated $250,000 to fund over 1,700 projects, with $2,000 of that directly coming into our community. In just 6 weeks, this effort helped to fully fund 11 projects submitted by local teachers. To share more about her partnership activities, I would like to introduce Julie Kudrina.
Wow, thank you. That was really nice. I want to start by saying thank you to the school board. The opportunity that you guys provide for partners to be able to partner with the schools, I just think it's wonderful. As a business owner, I think it helps the students, helps the teachers, and really the community as a whole. So as a business owner, I appreciate it, and I appreciate all you do. Who is Horace Mann? That's probably what a lot of people ask. I got that question a lot of times when I first started, and actually heard a lot of guesses whenever I first started. Everybody thought I worked for the school, the elementary school. But I'll start, and just very briefly, if I start to talk too long, y'all feel free to play the music from last night, that's okay. We're an insurance company started by teachers, actually, in 1945. A couple of teachers in Illinois thought that teachers deserved better auto insurance rates, so they started an insurance company. Through the years, that insurance company has grown into Horace Mann Insurance. We are the largest multi-line insurance company that focuses on educators. With that, it comes a huge responsibility, I think, just because of our name. Most of you know Horace Mann was the founder of public education, so for me to wear his name on my shirt, it means a lot to me. And I take it very seriously. So one of the main things, when I first started with the company in 2005, is when my priority was to become a partner in education with the district, because I thought that was very important. The first thing I did is I started sponsoring the Starcatcher Award. We had a lot of fun with that for 5 years, giving away Starcatcher Awards. But what that opened up so many relationships with the principals, and through those relationships, we've been able to facilitate teacher appreciation in so many ways. And that's what I love. That's my favorite part of my job. Right now, we're planning Teacher Appreciation Week, and it's grown into Teacher Appreciation 2 weeks for Horace Mann Insurance and Advantage Insurance. I sent out a little email to the teachers and said our principals said the first 10 to contact me, I would bring breakfast or lunch. Well, in like 30 minutes, I got 30 requests. So we're doing 2 weeks, and we're booked for 2 weeks, but that's fun. That's important to me. I think that when teachers feel appreciated, they pay it forward, and they're more energetic. As we saw last night, the results that come from that are just amazing. We've done some great attendance programs. Just one in particular I want to talk about because Jennifer's here. We had a little competition a couple years ago between Williams, Robertson, and Bissett trying to improve their quarterly attendance. And these principals, and I'm not kidding, they got into it and they had fun. They went to each other's buildings and they had boards up, and they were, we're gonna win, we're ahead this week and all that. And in the end, Bissett wound up getting a boys' bike and a girls' bike for 2 kids in their school, but everybody's attendance improved, I believe, through that quarter, so it was wonderful to do that. Giving away a few scholarships. Every year, Horace Mann gives out $30,000 in scholarships to educators who are extending their education. Kevin Huffman got one. We gave one to Judith Johnson, and also Jason Steingraber. So a couple of your principals have been able to get more education thanks to us. And probably as they were talking about when they introduced me, the Donors Choose program. In January, we partnered with DonorsChoose.org because we could see that educators, teachers, classroom teachers are spending so much money every year out of their pocket. The budget cuts that are happening are happening everywhere, and they're getting more and more. So we partnered with DonorsChoose.org. Our agents are going around and we're teaching teachers how to use the website. But through that, we actually, Horace Mann had a matching grant. We donated $250,000 to projects. But we've also donated through our agents another $250,000. So over $500,000 we've donated since February 1st. So I love that. What else can I say? Everything we do is designed around educators. Our products are all specifically designed for them. So that's one of the reasons I like to be in front of your teachers. I like to do things for them, but we also like to help them. Our auto policies are specifically designed for them with what we call our educator advantage. So we have benefits. We cover them if they have to transport a student. Our homeowner policy covers them if fundraising money is stolen. They don't have to pay a deductible, and we'll pay for it for them. Things like that are just part of our policy that is an extra benefit. And I'll leave it at that. There's so much more I could talk about for hours and hours, but I really just want to thank you for allowing me to be a partner, and I hope it continues. in the future.
Thank you. Julie, you can bring pancakes for the board anytime.
Talk to me in a couple weeks.
Okay. That's all of the president's report. Mr. Harrell, are you up and ready?
Yes, sir.
Right. Dr. Harrell, sorry.
Fine. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Board of Education. First of all, I want to apologize for the delay in the meeting and not having this up and loaded. I thought it had been sent and I had made a mistake. And Dr. Hackenworth said he didn't know I could move that fast. 4 years ago, in response to needs with the district towards our persistence to graduation efforts, our increased dropout numbers, and our failing to increase at that time graduation rate, part of our component that we put together was a position called the Coordinator of Site Intervention. This position has brought on board 5 individuals, one that works in each one of our school sites, and are a critical component to what is done every day to maintain the efforts of persistence to graduation, to work to support those students that need a little extra support here and there, and to help with just the day-to-day movement of the school and the process forward. It is my pleasure to have those 5 individuals here this evening to pay a tribute to them and their work. And they've also brought some friends that I think you're going to enjoy to meet and hear from. Our Coordinator of Site Intervention, or CSI, at Central High School is Mr. John Whitmer. John, if you'd come up. The CSI at Glendale High School is Miss Chris Hunsaker. At Hillcrest High School, Miss Melissa Allen. At Kickapoo High School, Mr. Scott Phillips. And then at Parkview High School, Miss Carla Ferguson. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Miss Ferguson. As soon as I figure out how to minimize this and bring okay.
Alrighty, thank you, Dr. Harrell. Good evening, and thank you for letting us present to you this evening. You can see we're represented here for your CSIs, and we are the hub of the schools. And you can see we start with administration. We have attendance advisor that we work with, cultural diversity, parents, at-risk freshmen, faculty and staff, community, upper grade level students, counselors, intervention teams, and A+ coordinators. We're constantly in contact with all of those members of each high school, of our own individual high school, but within the building. And I can tell you that it's an ever-changing, ongoing thing. We are the hub. CSI is the hub. Stakeholders travel at some point in time. See, this is different. Just a second here. Concerning at-risk students and their needs. So we're constantly in motion and visiting with these people. Okay. Our primary focus is to drop and increase the graduation rate through early intervention programs, resources focused on the top 25 at-risk freshmen. Why focus primarily on the freshmen? Well, the data shows that freshmen who have less than 85% attendance and 1 or more Fs are greater at risk of dropping out. This is based on a study out of Chicago. Okay, the CSI in the top 25. The CSIs meet frequently with these students to develop and build relationships with the students, review attendance data, review an achievement class grade data, review disciplinary incidents as needed, and make frequent positive and corrective parent contacts. Just some general information here. Okay, our current students at Central, we have 25 freshmen that we're servicing, 29 at Glendale, 25 at Hillcrest, 22 at Kickapoo, and 23 at Parkview. Our sophomores, you can see the numbers here. The sophomores, juniors, and seniors were originally top 25 at-risk freshmen, and they have since moved on, and we continue to work with them, even though it may not be as intense interventions. We still meet with them on a regular basis and work with them in those other capacities as well. So our sophomores at Central is 20, and you can read the data. It's over here. Out of our graduation, Central is expecting to graduate 9 of the remaining 12 original top 25 that they have in their building, so that's 75%. Glendale has 20 remaining, and they're on track to graduate 100% of those. Hillcrest has 6, which is 83%, Kickapoo 6 at 100%, and Parkview 12 left in the building at 100%. So the total numbers of kids that we've serviced over the last 4 years comes out to 624. At some point in time, we've had some contact, some intervention with those 624 students. Okay, graduating from the top 25. Now, what does this mean? Freshman students can graduate from the top 25 list by not having any, go over there, any of the 4 indicators. The CSIs move these students to a watch list and continue to monitor their progress, as well as continue making formal and informal contact with these students to strengthen that CSI student relationship. When a freshman student has graduated from the top 25 list, there's always another 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, however many, at-risk student that is added, and the cycle of relationship building continues. Okay, relationships is very key, as we all know. CSIs are doing just that by working with students, parents, staff, administrators, district personnel, and the community in building relationships with all stakeholders, connecting students and parents to needed resources. Example would be the teacher support team, counselors, attendance advisors, being the liaison between students, teachers, counselors, and administrators, as well as creating and holding an open line of communication with parents, students, counselors, teachers, and administrators. The building level expectations varies throughout each high school. It's dynamic and somewhat the product of an individual school's environment. The key to this role is focusing energies and resources toward 9th grade students while not losing sight of those upperclassmen top 25 at-risk students. The CSI is the focal point for all building level interventions and at-risk programs and efforts. The following are a few specialty programs developed, implemented, and are supervised by the CSIs for their specific high school. At Central, they have the STAR program, Students Together Achieving Results. It's a cohort for core classes through freshman year. They have, I'm not touching it, it's moving on its own. They have the SAINT team, Student Assistant Intervention team, the TST team. They have BARK, they don't bite, they just bark. Better Achievement Reaching Kids program, monitoring and assessment from team of administrators, counselings, and teachers. And they meet with 8th grade students from feeder schools, they being the CSI meets with the 8th grade students from feeder schools that have been identified as needing additional help transitioning into high school. And these kids that we meet with at the middle schools become our freshman top 25. And that's something that all of us do. You'll see that on all of our slides. Okay, Glendale, they have a freshman study skills. They have a pull-out session with tutors for those struggling with English, science, and math. And then next year, again, they meet with the incoming freshmen. Next year, they plan on implementing a mentoring program and have some built-in intervention time. Hillcrest. Top 25 study skills class, A+ tutors in the classroom to work with these students. Teacher mentors, fundraising for bus passes to help with attendance. That's been a big success. And I believe that Horace Mann has helped you with that at some point in time. They've helped all of us at some point in time with our attendance incentives. They just hosted a parent expo, I believe it was last night. They're bringing community resources to Hillcrest for all district parents to access and talk to people. They have a cooking class. Ms. Allen sponsors a cooking class for the incoming at-risk freshmen. And again, she also meets with her incoming 8th graders. Now we have Kickapoo. They have a freshman academy, which includes the at-risk freshmen that are not on the top 25 list. So it's focusing on reading improvement. They have study skills for sophomores, Chief Time, which is the academic advisement time, main focus, academic labs to improve grades in core subjects, but it's not just the core subjects, it's other subjects as well, but the primary focus would be the core subjects. And then at Parkview, we have a peer mentoring program matching former successful top 25 upperclassmen with incoming top 25 freshmen to help them transition into high school from middle school. We have a teacher top 25 seniors mentoring program, matching the TST members with top 25 seniors to help them transition from high school into the real world. We have our Endeavor, which is an academic advisement time for all students, with one class consisting solely of my top 25 at-risk freshmen. And it's taught by myself and a team certificated staff member. We have our freshman focus in class of 20, whatever it is, family fair. Freshman transitioning program, which is something we all have as well, freshman transitioning programs to help our incoming freshmen and their families become acclimated and feel welcome to Parkview. The dropout rate is decreasing. District-wide number of dropout comparison. In March of 2007, there were 400 reported dropouts across the district. In March of 2011, there were 202 reported dropouts across the district, a visible reduction of 198 dropouts, or 50%. Future plans for the CSIs. We want to continue to build upon our experiences and successes through strengthening the transitions of students between divisions, to work more closely with parents and community members in combating truancies, to carry on gathering and analyzing data that impacts attendance and graduation rates, to persist building positive relationships with all stakeholders, especially students, and to collaborate with all CSIs on a regular basis. And at this point in time, we have some students that we have brought with us, and I will introduce mine first, and then I'll step away and they can introduce theirs. I was able to bring two. A lot of our seniors, go figure, they work. You know, they have to have jobs, and they couldn't get off tonight. So we have, I have three. We have three. Okay, if you stand up when I announce your name, we have Mary Lang Bartel. Come on up. Sarah Schrock and Cody Calhoun.
I have four with me tonight, and I know they have to scoot when we get done there. A couple of them are taking off of work to be here, so I know this one is Braden Dillard, and we have Brandon Brake, Brittany Meeker, and Andrea Horton.
Our senior class at Glendale is also very, they are wanting to make money also. I have one with me tonight, Kelsey Garling.
All of mine are at work, and they all work together, so their boss told them none of them could have off because he wasn't going to just let one or two and not the other ones, so they're not here.
And Kickapoo is in the same boat as Miss Allen. We're all working tonight, so sorry.
We like telemarketing, and they don't like to let them off.
We felt like it would be really critical to have the opportunity to put face with names and to see the impact that this position has had, the difference it's making in lives of students across our district. Very proud of the work the CSIs have been doing, and don't know if any of our students wanted to say a couple of items. Any speakers tonight? Step up there, young man.
All right. All right, you guys got any questions you want to ask us about this?
Good job. Good job.
I have a question, but I don't think it's
Count.
any. I do have a question, but I'm not sure you're going to be able to answer it.
All right, give me it.
On that first slide, there were numbers represented, and it said that there were like 6 students that had originally started as freshmen that were now seniors, and 5 of those would be graduating. Where are the other 14?
That was mine.
Go right ahead.
And Central is in the same boat, I think.
Yeah. Basically, I actually sat down and looked at the numbers before I left, and out of my seniors, I have 6 left, and 5 are going to graduate. 1 is going to graduate next year. She just is that far behind. She had a child and took about a year off, so we're really time-wise doing about the same. But we're just a year behind our class. Senior-wise, I've had 6 of them that have moved to different schools, so we were no longer able to track them. I have 4 in alternative programs, such as Job Corps, Middle College, and Bailey. I have 1 that was an early graduator, graduated last year, and then I have 5 that are going to graduate in May, 1 that's going to be left, and then 13 of them were drops. And one of the things I want to tell you about the seniors, that we're talking about now. Carla and I are the two original. We've been with it all 4 years, but when we first went out and picked these kids, I know myself especially, you go out with the high hopes thinking I'm going to save all these kids. And so we really dove down and grabbed some low attenders, some kids who had really not been successful at all in the past, and we aimed out to save them. We've learned which kids are more easy to work with, per se. A kid who has less than 60% attendance is really hard to work with because they're not at school enough for you to work with them. So, we've definitely learned maybe how to better choose those kids that we're going to make a bigger impact with. I don't think we were as wise in our decision making our first year. So I do think you're going to see a bigger number, but as we go with our juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, that number drops considerably with the ones that are still around.
Thanks.
Of my senior top 25, the 12 that remain in Central School, we are graduating 9 this year. One, we're hoping to graduate possibly in August, if not first quarter next year over at Middle College. Just missed it by the skin of her teeth. There are 2 that will be, they like Central enough, they're going to come back for a 5th year. We have those. Of the 13 that left, within the state, but out of the SPS district. I have found out that those 7 are still in, and as far as I know, they're on track to graduate. 3 left the state, and I can't find them.
Thanks a lot. That gives me perspective. Yeah, it doesn't need.
Any other questions?
Or read quite a bit of research dealing with if you can catch them that last semester of their 8th grade year and work with them through 9th and get them through their sophomore first semester, you're way ahead to get them there. So I appreciate, and the numbers are, some people may think that's not very good. That's tremendous. And so I appreciate that, and I've seen some other school districts that are doing some of the same stuff and really focusing on that 8th grade transition year to high school is really important to work with them. And I had the question ready and you answered it in every one of them, that you already are working with the 8th grade. It's really close. So I think that's really, that's great. I appreciate that.
Question for the students. You've got 4 more weeks. Everybody's going to hang in there. 4 more weeks. We'll see you at Hammond Student Center on the 16th and 17th. Perfect. Good. Well, thank you, Dr. Harrell. Thanks to the CSIs and the students. Thank you guys for taking the time off work and coming here and impressing on us and the staff how well this program works. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Ritter, your report?
I think to respond to that a little bit, as far as we need to continue to drill down into the system and eventually 3rd grade, get everybody to reading level by 3rd grade, indicators in kindergarten, preschool, and things like that. So I think that's critical. I just really have one thing, of course, coming off of last night and the Teachers Appreciation Banquet. I want to thank really all the teachers and all the work that they've done, and to kind of extend that appreciation, but also congratulate really Abby Lowe for an outstanding presentation, and I want to congratulate and also thank the Springfield Public School Foundation for their work in putting on that banquet. I was really impressed with the Kickapoo film presentation, as well as the Hillcrest interview of, and also kind of on the spot view of Abby Lowe's classroom. So I really thought that was outstanding. And then, of course, I want to congratulate Julia Armstrong for becoming the Teacher of the Year in light of the stress that she and her 2 sisters went through as far as the surgery for her dad, and also the celebration of their new nephew. But either way, I thought it was an exceptional night last evening. So that's really all I have for tonight, because we have plenty of other things to talk about.
We do.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take public comments on specific agenda items, and let me remind the speakers that the board welcomes comments from the audience about the issues being discussed. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes and be timed. It's inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in open meeting.
I did.
And if you,
I forgot some.
okay. And if you have concerns, address the staff people. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I totally forgot about the New Frontiers Conference that we're going to have
Oh,
this
yes,
summer.
yes.
Yeah, and it's on the agenda. And we have Pam here to share with us what that's all
Okay.
about. So Pam Hankins, please.
Good evening, Mr. President and Board. Dr. Ritter, I will forgive you for forgetting me.
I didn't forget you.
Yes, he forgot me. Let the record reflect, Dr. Ritter forgot me.
I forgot you. You could say that this year, get away with it. Okay.
You'll have to pardon my voice. I have the spring allergy frog, so I know it's painful to listen to me tonight. But I'd like to introduce to you my colleague, Dr. Sandra D'Angelo. She is the director of the Missouri Parent Information Resource Center. We'll call it PERC for short, and the lead conference organizer. And our purpose here tonight is twofold. First of all, is to give you information about this unprecedented opportunity to learn for area educators, including Springfield. And secondly, to extend an invitation to you. On June 9 and 10, the Burrell Center, with funding through the U.S. Department of Education and a PERC grant, will host an educational reform conference in Springfield. Titled The New Frontier, Blazing Fresh Trails in Educational Reform, this conference targets area schools in need of improvement. Dr. D'Angelo, along with support from SPS, has built a 2-day conference featuring 11 of the key leaders in educational thought and reform. Speakers such as Doug Reeves, Michael Fullen, Dr. Joyce Epstein, and others will give keynote addresses as well as lead in-depth breakout sessions for deeper learning. 1,200 seats are available to all Title I schools in the Southwest and Mid-State areas of Missouri. Those schools in need of improvement have been invited to attend the conference at no cost. Thanks to Dr. D'Angelo, Springfield Public Schools has been allotted 300 of those seats at this conference at no cost. Currently, you'll be pleased to know that 219 of our allotted 300 seats have been claimed. As a high-performing Board of Education, you consistently demonstrate your desire to learn. Therefore, we wish to extend an invitation to any of those of you who can attend this conference. If you wish to attend, just please email me at phankins@sps.org for the New Frontiers Conference, and we will see that. To thank Dr. D'Angelo, the Burrell Center, and the PERC grant for making this event possible. So let's give her a round of applause.
And I just want you all to know what a great colleague Pam has been and how helpful the SPS staff has been in helping us put this together. We couldn't do it without them.
Thank you, Dr. Ritter. I forgive you.
Okay. I'll have to talk to you at another time because that wasn't very sincere.
All right, now we'll take speakers addressing agenda items, and I think we have one, Dr. Crow, addressing the health teacher program, which I think is our agenda item 8.07 on the curriculum adoption.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, sir. I'm Sam Crow. I'm a family physician, and I work at Sisters of Mercy Health System. I'm a medical director for the St. Louis operation and a family physician here in Springfield, have been for going on 20 years now. I just wanted to make sure that Mercy expressed our great interest in the fact that the Springfield Public Schools has agreed to use the Health Teachers product, which is a $5 million investment on behalf of the Sisters of Mercy Health System to help our teachers throughout in fact, the entire state of Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma, to use the very comprehensive curriculum of health education, at least 300 plans, health plans, and grades kindergarten through high school, to provide good vetted and well put together lessons in various issues. And on behalf of the Sisters of Mercy Health System, we want to thank you very much for signing on with our program. There's no strings attached except that you use it. We're only asking that your teachers, which not just health teachers should do this. I mean, anyone in a teacher's situation or even a counselor situation can use these curriculums. So that's all I had to say. Thank you very much, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Crow. I think we can move to informational items. Quarterly report, Dr. Ritter.
Yes, Mrs. Kinsinger and Dr. Goodman.
Good evening, Dr. Prater and board and Dr. Ritter. It's exciting to come to you. 5 years ago, you had the vision as the Board of Education to ensure that students and staff in Springfield Public Schools had access to data that they could use to really inform learning. And it's been a very exciting journey. I thought it was interesting today. Many of you were at Senator McCaskill's roundtable that the federal government is just now starting to talk about whether or not we should look at beginning to end of year performance results. And we have been on this journey thanks to your vision and leadership for 5 years. And we are at a point where we have, as through your guidance and Dr. Ritter's guidance, made a commitment to calculate growth. But we also know from your leadership that it's important that we have the ability to transform that growth data into information, and then most importantly, to take that information and translate it into insight. The Performance Series system has allowed us to create a model that will help us get away from shame and blame and move into inform and improve. We know it's critical to thoughtfully consider how to effectively measure growth. And to that end, based on your guidance, Dr. Goodman and his team has worked diligently over the past several months at the conclusion of our first year of full deployment to research and develop a growth model for our Performance Series assessment results. Tonight, Dr. Goodman, as part of the quarterly report, will be sharing with you preliminary growth results for this current year from beginning to middle of year. But more importantly, and a little bit different than we have done in the past in our quarterly reports, he's going to spend some time providing an overview to introduce both you and our community to key considerations of the growth model. And this is important to do to lay a foundation for future use of growth data in our district. Dr. Goodman.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to present to you the third quarterly report for the 2010-2011 school year. Following our format with the quarterly report, we have identified some key highlights to bring forward this evening in the report based off of how we have operationally defined our categories. This evening I'll be providing an update on our gains by quartile and expected amounts in the areas of language arts, reading, and math, and to connect with what Mrs. Kissinger just laid out, that is where we'll spend a little time as to how this growth system works. We have identified an area needing further study, with that being the percent of students meeting college readiness benchmarks by content area off of the ACT. This is on a new indicator that we have brought in to get at this idea of college and career readiness. So this is a test pilot measure, and we want to spend a little time with that this evening. And then finally, we want to close with a strength identified as the percent of students engaged in participating in choice opportunities within SPS. So to begin on the idea of thinking about growth and thinking about gain, when we think about growth, we really have kind of two questions that come to mind. One, how much has the child learned? And that's a question of the magnitude. So how much have you gained in your learning? And secondly, is that amount good enough? So it's one thing to know I have done X amount. The second piece is a contextual question, or a normed question, how much in reference to something else. A quote that seemed fitting and appropriate for that is that those questions are intuitive, but to get at a justifiable answer in terms of, to quote here, the psychometric and statistical gymnastics, may not be so. And so it's not as easy as then just going as saying, well, it's a plus minus, you know, we're up 20 and 20 is enough. How do we get there to know? So within the performance series assessments, we have any number of available statistics and scores that we can use on understanding student performance and understanding how students are doing in their learning. And these terms, as educators and as practitioners in the district, we're well versed in, and we just kind of throw them out, but oftentimes we haven't been systematic to say this is the whole range. When we think about growth, the endorsed measure within the system is the scaled score. And so the scaled score becomes kind of that main predominant piece to inform these decisions. So an example, and you see here a bar chart representing 4 groups. And so if we say, okay, well, we know where group 1 was at the beginning of year, we know where group 4 was at the beginning of year, and we also know where all we're at the end of year. We say what was the difference, average it out, and here we have it. So we can see group 1 is up 117, 166, 179, 133. This is getting at that question of how much has been learned. So, question 1 answered here, but it doesn't help us really understand, is that enough, or how does that look in reference to some other things? So if we took these groups and, we could plot them, and we could say, well, here's the beginning of year score form, here's the end of year, and this is the difference between the two for group 1 through group 4. And we could, do the difference, which is what was back here, of just showing that difference from end versus beginning. It's still just telling us how much. We could go on the student level. And so what we see represented here then would be a student within these groups where each bar would reflect the amount of gain or loss if it's below 0. So a student was here at beginning of year and here at end of year would be reflected by a loss. And we could look at those and take that across the board, and we could see, if each bar was a student, kind of where the students in the groups fell. That'd be group 1 and group 2, or group 3 and group 4. And this is kind of natural as ways that could be looked at it, whether at a group level or an individual. Well, there's another kind of piece here, and that's to get at this idea of how much is enough, or within what kind of context. And that's where, through the performance series assessment, and through the assessment vendor themselves, Scantron, has identified this workforce, and we have to get there through what's called a quartile. It's not a new measure that's introduced that's new or different off of the scaled score idea. In fact, the scaled score informs all of these measures. And so in this case, we have a scaled score that a student receives from taking an assessment, and off of that scaled score, based on where they fall, they get a percentile. And so we are familiar with percentiles. I have young children. You take a baby to the doctor, and they measure them in terms of weight and height. And they say, okay, they weigh 15 pounds, or they're 22 inches long. Okay, that's giving me the number, how much they are. Give me that in reference to something else, context. Well, that places them at the 90th percentile in height and the 50th percentile in weight. Okay, so they're fairly tall and average size on weight. Similarly here with the percentile piece. So a student score of 2,000 in and of itself probably doesn't mean much to us. But if the 50th percentile of 5th graders in reading, okay, kids that took it below, or that took it scored below, so translated into, when we take a normal from the first percentile to the 9th, and we break it into equivalent groups. So to get at that idea, because again, there's no real transformation here other than that Scantron provides us the norms, is that the quartiles just break the normal distribution into 4 equivalent groups, where the first quartile represents the percentiles of 1 through 25, the second 26 to 50, the third 51 to 75, the fourth 76 and above. And so to abbreviate this out, then you'll see in our presentation, or as we think about it, this idea of Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, just reflecting what quartile group based off of what percentile group based off of what scaled score to get at. So thus the introductory quote that it would be easy if we could just say, up 100 is where we want everybody at 2,100, but it doesn't quite fall that way. It's not unique just to SPS. We're not the only ones giving it, that within a national context we can understand performance. So through some of their norming work, Scantron, the assessment vendor identified how much gains are observed based on the quartile of a grade level of a content area across the normal population that was sampled out for this assessment. And so what we then get is what are called observed mean gains. And Scantron has provided this documentation for us. And so it's about an 8-page document that says how much scaled score gain would a student in the first quartile in 4th grade math be expected to gain from the beginning of year to the end of year. So not only is there not even, is it not necessarily the same within just a quartile 1 versus quartile 4, there's variation across the grade levels and then at a third dimension on that of content areas. But the idea of Q1 through Q4 still falls the same. And so there are unique amounts available. So this is a sample then of what that looks like, and this pattern generally holds across the quartiles, across the grade levels, and across the content areas. And this is the pattern, that for quartile 1 students, the expectation is usually the largest. So we can see here, these are the actual observed mean gains that should be seen for 4th grade students in reading, as the sample shows. So generally we see the quartile 1 expectation is here, quartile 2 is down from that, quartile 3 is down from that, and quartile 4 is down from that. So in benchmarking it out that way, we might think of the idea of growth again. I gave an example of taking a baby to the doctor to be measured in height and weight. But if I say to you, Jim grew 3 inches, well, that would matter if Jim was a 2-year-old. We might expect to say, well, 3 inches, that was a pretty good clip. Now, if Jim was 70 years old and grew 3 inches, that would be quite different. It's really kind of the same idea, depending upon the context in which where the students are starting. And so if we translate that even onto a percentile perspective, if we had 2 student scores, and we had a student scoring at the beginning of the year in the 10th percentile, and a student scoring at the 90th percentile, it would be easier, according to the psychometrics here, for a student to move from the 10th to the 20th percentile as opposed to the 90th to the 100th. It's not a straight linear pattern, it's a curve the further up you get, and that's evidenced by the fact that the amount of observed mean gains for a 4th quartile in this example is 64. That's like a third of what the Q1s are. So then we have this idea of where the students start at. So I gave you 4 hypothetical groups a moment ago. This would be the population of those groups, and so let's say we had 59 of, and I don't know what the total N is here, I'm sorry, I should have figured. 59 of them are 1/4 gains. The quartile is the same. Got, Q3, and then half of that. But remember that we know what the expected amount is per the quartile, per the content, per the grade level. So if we subtract that expected amount out, that's what we really want to see. And that's what this idea here provides. So in this instance, 0 is acceptable because this would factor and this would strip out the observed mean gains and say, okay, 204.83 was the expectation for Q1. Pulling that apart, how and where does performance fall? So within this hypothetical scenario here, then we can see Q1 and Q2 are right there at expectation. Yes, they are down of 2/3 of a point and 3 points, but this is an assessment whose scale runs from 1,300 to 3,700. So it's a very finely grained details of the scale, so very small. Q3 is 47 beyond what was expected, and Q4 is 13 above what was expected. So if we translate this out, then we're wanting to see it at 0 or above. So think about it from the idea of groups. Remember a minute ago we had the bars and we said, well, group 2 and group 3 were kind of high, group 1 was here, and group 4 was down a little bit. If we go in and say, well, what was the distribution of kids by the quartiles within these buildings, that may kind of change how this looks. So there's the actual counts. It's easier to understand as percents. So we can see group 1 had 40% of their kids in the first quartile, group 4, 40% approximately in the first quartile, versus group 2 who had 1/3 in the 4th. And so this is a realistic portrayal of the data, so to speak, these variations from group to group. So we can take that same idea and extract it at kind of any level of group we want. So I gave you the overall average right here, but if we stripped it out to a group perspective, we could go the same way. So in this instance, we'd see our groups here, whoops, group 1 through group 4, and along the way, we're then seeing them kind of chunked together. So in this case, group 3 is the only group who met or exceeded expectation for each quartile in the 4th grade reading assessment. Now, if we were working with this data in real world with the building and with the principals, this would be 4th grade reading. We'd also need to look at 4th grade language and 4th grade math because each context is a little different. So within there, we can then begin to see that it's not quite as straightforward as the plus minus. Fortunately, I think we've got a way to effectively communicate it that we now want to kind of set up for you and give some context to. And I'm going to take questions, and we can do that now or at the end of this
I just
session.
need a clarification. In terms of who makes up those groups, so we're
It could-
looking at group, are those different schools? Is that what?
It could be any hypothetical group. I didn't,
So
yeah, I mean,
subgroups, a school?
yeah, a school, you know, everybody on
Classrooms in a
Sunshine or
school?
whatever.
Yeah, okay,
Sure.
all right, that just helps.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to then share with what we put in the quarterly report on this, front load what it would look like in the 4th quarterly, and then we can take questions and discuss this on this spot, because I know it's a lot to digest. So what we presented as this piece to update you on gains is the first thing to keep in mind is we're still in process. So this is an in-process measure. The year, there's still more time left, so to speak, for gains to accumulate. This reflects the difference of the scaled score averages by the quartiles, by the grade level, from beginning to middle of year. That's the colored bar, blue in this case. Black, the black line, reflects what is the observed mean gain for that quartile and grade level. So if we see an instance such as Q1 at 4th grade, Q1 there, or Q1 there, they've already met expected gains for the year from beginning to middle of year. So that's a pretty powerful thing, saying a year's worth of gain for 7th grade Q1 is maybe about 75. Our Q1s at 7th grade have already accumulated the 75 expected of them given where they started. So when we come back then in the 4th quarterly, you'll see a presentation that will look more like this idea here of it by grade level, to where you'll be fully seeing the full year in perspective to be able to see the quartiles by the grade levels. So there's language arts, there's reading, and again the same idea holds that really the amount still is the difference from the bar to the black line is still to come. And then math. So, questions?
Go ahead.
I've often said I wish I'd paid better attention to my stats classes in college.
I think we get a
But
diploma after tonight.
you did a really good job of explaining, I think, a very complex series of concepts. But just so we're all on the same page, the black line on these, on what's actual data for us, represents where students should be at the end of the year.
Yep.
So that we're not showing gaps
That's right.
until we have that final data.
That's right.
Okay, and I think
Yeah.
that that's important.
Yeah, it's kind of the in-process piece. And so it's, you know, I mean, the idea of just thinking about growth in general, whether learning or physical growth or any type of development, I think applies, that we know that growth occurs at different rates. Someone goes through a growth spurt in the 4th grade, and they're much taller than all the other boys or girls in their class, but that may be the summation of that growth. And so it happens at different rates. So I bring that example forward to say that we're still early enough in the deployment and looking at it this way that we don't have a benchmark as to be able to just you know, divide the expected amounts by 9, say, you know, let's get this much per month, because I mean we may find that we get much more early, or I mean it could be more equal throughout the year.
So we're not sophisticated enough to have middle of the year.
No, I mean I've debated dividing it in 2,
Oh,
but I
no,
can't.
no, that's a
I
lot
can't
of
find a
work.
basis for it.
That's a lot of work. So, I mean, this is really, in terms of I mean, even for a classroom teacher, this would be kind of hard data to use.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the.
Really know.
Well, what it provides you is at the middle of year point as a way to benchmark and see at the student level where they're at in terms of what's still to come. So, you know, recall within our systems we have a inform that is kind of a teacher level data warehouse. Well, we this data back in there as well as the beginning of year, subtract the difference for them, and then also drop in what was expected and subtract the difference from that. So they can use it in process to see, okay, these three have already hit growth expectation, these two are right there, and these two are lower, and so that can inform the work relative to, you know, kind of a known and fair expectation.
Other questions?
Dr. Goodman, I have one question, and I think I know the answer to this, but once a student is identified in a quartile, they stay in that quartile throughout the school, throughout the academic year.
Yeah, so the quartile placement is based off of the beginning of year assessment, and they do stay in there through the term of the year, yes. The other piece that comes in on that, just as a complete side note, is it also represents the criticalness of having the beginning of year score. And so like the question of, I heard through the CSI presentation, this idea of transiency, and I know we've discussed it previously as well, but if we have a student come in at December, i.e. the middle of year point, we don't even know where the B was to start, and we know we're not years about how to think through that. Okay, I'm going to go on to the other two pieces then. Areas needing further study. We have the college readiness benchmarks out of ACT, and this is something that ACT has been developing and working on, and really is promoting more publicly lately. And so what it is, we have students that take the ACT, and students get scores on a composite score, or they get an English score or a math score, so on and so forth. Through research, ACT has looked at what is the minimum of in a credit-bearing college course. So imagine you study where you have a whole pool of, and you knew if they were successful, they passed B or higher, you know, in an English 1 or an Algebra 1 at the college level, and said, okay, what score can be used to be indicating who is in position to be successful at that college level piece. And so that's what the benchmark pieces represent. The percents presented here are the percent of students taking the ACT that obtained that readiness benchmark score or higher. So it really is kind of a line in the sand. They just have a table, and I think I presented that data in the report as well, that says, you know, it needs to be an 18 in English. So what do we do is we look at, okay, what is the percent of students who had that score or higher that would translate out here. And this measure is serving as a test pilot measure for us. So there's not a indicator kind of running status check on, you know, how we're doing with it. This is our first attempt to bring one potential way to think about college career readiness forward to you all at this point, and then we'll look at some others within the fourth quarterly as well. So consider this kind of a test measure. So when we get there, oh, well, that doesn't help if it isn't up, does it? I must have gotten excited with my slide deletion. Sorry. So the data lays out where SPS reflects the green line, and we have been able to obtain a Missouri and a national comparison point. So what does that percent look like? And what's interesting on this is actually quite similar to what we see with our ACT scores in general as well, that generally SPS falls here, and then Missouri and Nation kind of here, across the content areas, and we see that same trend kind of hold through here. The way we're looking at it, though, is we're saying what percent of students are at or above that college readiness standard. So we can then, if we say, well, what is it for English? Well, it's approximately 80% across the span, and it's approximately 50% for math. And so that's why I think it's important for us that we were able to find those comparisons of Missouri and national, because on the surface it's alarming. It's a difference of 30%. However, we can see it is also similarly occurring at the state and national level as well on those instances. The last part within there, the meeting all four, is just being able to look at what percent of students meet the benchmark in English, math, reading, and science. Because there is some back and forth. I mean, on the surface you'd say, well, if they've got it all, if they got one, they've got it all. But in actuality, we can see kind of how that plays out, and that meeting all four for us has fallen about 30% compared to about 25% for the state nation. So again, a test measure, and be happy to take questions on that as well. And then let me share the choice offerings, and then that will conclude my portion.
Let me ask a question on this while we're here. It's comforting to know that the green line is above the black line and the red line. But what's not comforting, for me at least, are two things. Number one, the slope of the green line is flat. And number two, how low science and math are compared to everything else. And I would just encourage staff, when we look at curriculum development, like we'll be doing tonight, in science especially, that are we picking the right curriculum to raise that bar? I mean, yes, it's a national problem, but that doesn't mean we have to be complacent because it's a national issue. And number two, are we directing our efforts into raising the slope of that green line?
And I would add that to some extent I might almost expect kind of a flat line in this case, because we haven't traditionally monitored or brought it forward to be more strategic about it. So, if the board determined this, this would be an area to continue focus on as far as like this would look like the measure and work towards that. I think then once we can start to think about what are the interventions that get at addressing this, because we have had ACT, as a measure to get at the student achievement side. This one actually falls in the goal 2 of graduation rate, of kind of the student engagement idea. And so it's a little bit different twist, I would contend, to think about how do we raise this percent meeting the standard versus just raising the ACT score. It's a little bit different question.
Questions on this part?
What's the percentage of students that take the ACT? Do you recall?
I can't pull it off the top. I'd put it in between 60 and 70.
60 is what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and I think the ACT test is being used so much differently than it used to. I mean, it used to be a test that only college-bound, college prep kids took. I mean, and so it would be interesting to me to see a comparison of, as states have moved more to using the ACT as kind of a high school exit exam, or kind of a end of course year exam. It really, from what I understand, it's a test that was created for one reason and purpose that's now being used for a variety of other reasons. And it gives us some information, and like Dr. Prater said, I'm glad we're above the black and red line, but it's still not, at least that information in and of itself doesn't speak well for students' preparation, particularly in math and science. But I don't know, it almost seems like we need additional information,
right.
Maybe beyond the ACT.
The ACT
to look at
is being very strategic anymore. The organization is, and more and more states are requiring ACT of all students. And so that's what you're talking about. And then within that, just like our Inform, they're breaking the ACT down. In other words, there's other tests that you take, 8th grade, sophomore, plan, explore. And then eventually, in that process, you're being very strategic as far as getting kids ready for that college. And ACT is putting it together and helping with that plan. So that's what you're referencing.
I'm just saying it used to be given to,
Right, the high level.
yeah, a college, a definitely almost a 4-year college-bound student, you know, and I think just the way it's being used and the way that that test and that organization have positioned themselves, and, you know, they do make money off of those tests. And so I just think it would be helpful for us to find other ways to get to some of the same information to see if it's comparable or
And I would add that for the fourth quarterly report, we have that on the horizon, as well as bringing some other additional measures in this idea of student preparation for workplace and higher education.
Go ahead.
Okay, and finally, last measure, percent of students engaged in choice offerings. Let's see if I can bring it up from here. So the SP5 measures call for 20% of SPS students by the year 1920. And so if we kind of backtrack that piece out, the target for the 10-11 school year was 13%. You can see that 13.8% of our students are participating in choice offerings. And note also that the boxes at the bottom do reflect the actual student counts of how many students we are talking about. So this has been identified as a strength because of the upward trend from just under 11% in 07-08, our first year of benchmarking and bringing this forward, a consistent upward trend across the 4 years of data presented. And so then in conclusion, we presented and shared with you 3 areas tonight, one of which took a little more time than the others. Thank you for hanging with me. The gains by quartile and expected amounts for our content areas of language arts, reading, and math, the ACT percent meeting college readiness benchmark standards, and the percent of students engaged in choice offerings with SPS. I'd be happy to take questions at this time beyond, or even back on previous content discovered.
Questions? Just one comment in talking to a couple of board members after some sessions at the NSBA, I think a highly performing board's next step is then to ask staff to put a fiscal note on some of these quarterly reports. We may say what choice programs are the most cost beneficial, the most effective per dollar spent, what things that have driven performance series improvement are inexpensive, expensive, and where does that all fall into the budget? So I think that's something to look forward to. Yes, Chris Callan.
I'd just like to make a comment. This is a little off the subject, but Dr. Goodman and I have been working on a project, the community report card, the community focus report. I think this is the 4th or 5th time that it's been produced to really help our community look at a variety of areas of community life and to identify blue ribbons and red flags. And I would just like to publicly thank Dr. Goodman for offering his expertise and his real knowledge of statistics and data, and to that report. I think it has really strengthened what we're able to present to the community in terms of educational challenges and educational successes, and he's just very generously given of his time and knowledge, so couldn't think of a better time than to kind of
Absolutely.
highlight
Thank you.
that.
And it's been my pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. Action items, we've got several things to consider. 8.01.
So we have one more report, don't we?
Oh, I'm sorry, we have bond report.
Steve.
Sorry.
Just a small.
I'm new at this.
Mr. Went?
Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Ritter, it's my pleasure this evening to bring to you the quarterly report on the 2009 bond projects. The complete report was attached with the information item, and I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights for you this evening. First, I'd like to just touch on the air conditioning projects. The projects here are listed in chronological order. At the top of the list, Jared and Reed, which are projects that we started our commissioning during last fall, and then we got into the colder weather. We weren't able to complete the commissioning then. We had to wait till the temperatures warmed up so that we could finish that. So we're in the final stages of our commissioning on those two projects. The York project, we had a bid opening back on March 30th, and at the special session last week, the board, that was presented to the board, and they awarded that project. Roundtree, we had a bid opening back on April 6th, and that will be presented to the board later this evening. The Robertson, that's the rebid, and we are looking at having a bid opening on April 27th and be bringing that to the board on May 3rd. Sunshine, we're looking at a bid opening on May 11th and bringing that to the board on the May 24th meeting. Boyd, this is the project where we've done a change in engineering, and so our schedule's pushed a little to where we're looking at a bid opening on May 25th, and the next scheduled board meeting for that, in line after that bid opening, is actually the June 14th. Administration may ask if the board may consider potentially having a special session earlier in June to be able to help with that construction window on that project. The Phelps project, we have that open at this point. It is basically designed at this point. Our priority is to get the other elementary projects scheduled and get those underway. We don't believe that this project, as it has some special timing with testing and a few other things to coordinate with, but we don't believe that this would hinder the board from doing an early calendar in the 12-13 school year if that was the decision to be made at that time. The TEFT project is one that we are looking at actually bidding late summer, as with their schedule at that facility, the best time to do the construction work is actually during the December-January month, so that really helps us out as we look at a very packed summer. As we go to the construction projects, first we look at the Hillcrest High School project, and this one is a abbreviated site map, if you will, and basically where the FEMA section is located on the back of the property. I just want to point that out here as a reference. And then also at the Hyper facility, basically where we're looking at where the elevator will go in for that facility. As we look at, this is actually the floor plan for the Hyper, and there's going to be renovation in both locker rooms, and again where we are locating the elevator for our ADA requirement. As we look at the FEMA portion of this project, that actually will be the new construction, which makes up this cafeteria area here. Where the kitchen is located is right at currently, if I can get this working, currently where we have 4 classrooms that are down in the lower level. That will be turned into the new cafeteria, into the new kitchen, and then the actual safe room will be the cafeteria area. Here are some renderings that the architect put together for us to get an idea of what that addition to that facility will look like for us. Nice. As we look at the Westport project, I just want to talk a minute again about the FEMA component to this project. Here I've kind of flipped the floor plan for you, but the FEMA piece is really represented here through the gym and through the locker room areas for this project. And this has, we believe this will be a great component to this project and a real positive thing for the community. There's been a lot of delay in getting official word from FEMA on these projects, and we just recently got the official a letter certified from FEMA through SEMA to us that we have received that grant. So with the delays that have taken, where we had initially anticipated hearing those things back last October, that will push our construction schedule. And so now what we're looking at is bidding it this summer and actually not able to do a school start in the fall of 2012, and unfortunately looking at a mid-year start, which would be the January of the 2013 school year. That's the site plan that you've seen in the past. As we look at the Jeffries project, another project that has a FEMA component to it, but let me just show you here. It's laid out basically the same way as the upper diagram, where you see our actual site property here. We've got James River along here, and here's our scenic. As we look at the site plan for it, one of the things that we're looking at enhancing to that is we have some traffic issues there, and along with our bus circulation. So what we're looking at is actually bringing in through actually Glen Street, which comes into the back of the property here, and actually bringing in a bus loop through the back of the property there, and then also reworking how the traffic flow works through the other part. We think this will be a very nice piece to this project. As we look at the actual floor plan, the gym and platform area with some restrooms makes up the FEMA component of it. We have the new office area, which we're able to take advantage of setting up the security type vestibule like we have on other projects in the past. Here we can see some of the elevations that the architects have put together. It's always a challenge when you're dealing with a big box to make it look attractive, if you will, and they're looking at some of the precast panels and doing some things to give it some texture. And here you can see kind of the rendering of what you can expect to see as we pull up to the front of it in the future. At Glendale High School, we have our electrical and technology infrastructure upgrades that are going on. Here we see a pretty exciting picture for you of some of the conduit. The contractors were able to take advantage of the spring break and get some of the trenching work and some of the conduit in place. It'll be a challenging project. They're really gearing up now as there's going to be a series of shutdowns, some partial, some complete. Our first shutdown of total power to the building is going to be, is tentatively scheduled June 8th through the 10th, so we'll have 3 days when the facility is completely shut down. We're excited about that. And but there's going to be a number of those, and the contractors are doing a great job, and the engineers in working with the coordination of all of those. Then we have our technology. The technology bond update. At this particular point in time, they're going very well on schedule. They're within the budget. They're at 42% completion on the smartboard installation, and they've also done a great job in scheduling with some sensitivity around the map testing. So when the map testing finishes, they'll get geared right back up, but they had already planned that in their schedule. So I want to thank Rick Green and his folks for handling all of that for us. We appreciate their efforts. And of course, we definitely enjoy seeing a few pictures of our students utilizing the technology in the classrooms. With that, I would just like to thank all the staff, as it's always trying to work through not only the design process, but when we get into the actual construction of things, it's crazy, and we appreciate the cooperation that our staff gives us in working through these. And we'll be here to answer any questions.
Wow. Questions? Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot you.
Hey, we're even.
Okay. Now it's your turn, Dr. Ritter.
This time we would like to have the board, I believe this is where you're going to select delegates, okay? And I don't know if you've had the conversation as far as who they are going to be. And so all we need now is a recommendation and support from the board on delegates to the Assembly for Missouri School Board Association. Okay?
I understand Mr. Renner and Mr. Hosmer were
So
ready.
who is the delegate and who's going to be the alternate?
This changed.
You
We have
have
two on
one
the
One
board
is the
now.
delegate, one's the alternate.
We already have two established right now, so we need one more.
I'll make a motion. I move that the board select Mr. Renner as our delegate and Mr. Hosmer as our designated alternate.
Second.
We can vote, Mr. Lee?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
That was easy.
Voted no.
You should have voted no.
We've changed all the responsibilities, Bruce, so you don't really know what you're getting into, so.
8.02, Board Policy IL. Dr. Ritter.
Yes, Ms. Kissinger? Oh, yes, Doctor.
Thank you. This evening, we bring a revision of Board Policy IL, currently titled Testing Program, with a proposed name change to Assessment Program for your first reading. Board policies are reviewed periodically to determine if revisions are necessary and appropriate, and Springfield Public Schools Policy Board IL was adopted in 2004. Since that time, the Missouri School Boards Association has drafted a sample companion policy for guidance, which they adopted in 2010. So we bring this to you in April for your consideration. We did attach a copy of the revised policy, and the proposed revisions include additions, changing some language to help clarify, to capture some practices that are in place and bring those in line with board policy. So we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time for first reading.
Questions? I take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Callen and Mrs. Twitty, that the Board of Education approve the name change and revised Board Policy IL Assessment Program for first reading. Mr. Renner?
Aye.
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 Policy IGBH.
Dr. Harrell, the next one. Getting ahead of you here.
Good evening again. IGBH, Programs for English Language Learners. The state does require that we ensure that appropriate instructional programs are provided for students whose native or home language is different than English, and to also establish procedures for identifying and assessing, providing those services to English language learners. This policy is based off guidance and guidelines from the Missouri School Board Association. There will be no fiscal impact with this policy, and I have Mrs. Janine Causey here with me this evening to answer any questions.
Questions for Mrs. Causey or Dr. Harrell? Straightforward. I'd take a motion then.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty?
Second.
Mr. Renner seconded. That the Board of Education approve policy IGBH, Programs for English Language Learners, for first reading. Mr. Lee?
Aye.
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 I'd like to thank Ms. Causey. By the way, you look very relaxed. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Good.
She retired, what, 2 years ago now?
He's gonna say
Also, I think we have just over 500. It's growing as far as English language learners. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Policy JG.
Dr. Harrell?
This is a revision, a slight addition to the current policy JG, which is student discipline. The policy now aligns with recommendations from the Missouri School Board Association, and there would be no fiscal impact with the revisions of this policy.
Questions? Motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Callen? Dr. Renner? That the Board of Education approve policy JG, Student Discipline, for first reading. Mr. Renner?
Aye.
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 And JGE,
Dr. Harrell?
formerly JG1.
Gets worse.
JGE, formerly JG1, Discipline of Students with Disabilities. This policy revision is also a name change, as is mentioned in the title. This is based off the reauthorization of IDEA and DESE guidelines to districts regarding discipline of students that necessitate a change to the current policy of JG1. Legal counsel recommended that the district adopt the MSBA recommended policy for JGE, also titled Discipline of Students with Disabilities. The MSBA recommended board policy JGE is overarching. It allows for the district practices to align to changes in legislation and DESE guidance without constantly changing the policy itself. These revisions have been reviewed by legal counsel. There will be no fiscal impact for the revision of this policy.
Thank you. Any questions on this one? And a motion?
I move we approve the adoption.
Mr. Lee?
Second?
Mrs. Callen, thank you. That the Board of Education approve the adoption of policy JGE, Discipline of Students with Disabilities, for first reading. Mr. Renner?
Aye.
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 Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Thank you. Thought we were going to have a non-unanimous vote there for a minute. Board policy JGGA.
Board policy JGGA, seclusion, isolation, and restraint. This policy is due to changes in Missouri law RSMO 160.263, dealing with seclusion, restraint, as well as response to emergency situations that involve student and/or staff safety. The state does require the Board of Education adopt and have in place the policy by July 1 of 2011. The policy used for guide here is MSBA's policy. Seclusion, isolation, restraint should be used only in response to emergency situations. Should not be viewed as a behavior change or intervention strategy, used only in extreme situations, and implemented only by trained personnel. The MSBA recommended policy JGA served as a template. The proposed policy has been reviewed by legal counsel. Due to some materials and training, there will be a slight fiscal impact with the implementation of this policy.
Alan?
It's more of a comment, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but we're making this change because of recent changes to Missouri law, and there will be a fiscal impact. Was there accompanying money from the state that came to fund the districts?
I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but I don't know for sure.
Sometimes I like to state the obvious, but I think, I think it's a good thing to do, but it's just another example of how unfunded mandates. And we were talking to Senator McCaskill about that from the federal level, but certainly impacts us at the state level as well. So, but with that, I'll make a motion to approve this.
Motion by Mrs. Callen.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lee, that the board approve policy JGGA, seclusion, isolation, restraint, for first reading. Which way do I start? Mr. Lee?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Keep going, everybody. Okay. Curriculum resource adoption, Mrs. Kissinger.
Ms. Pepper. Calvin? No?
Good evening. It's certainly my pleasure to bring you a proposal this evening for the purchase of textbooks and other curriculum resources, materials, and classroom technology, which will support and enhance instruction and learning in Springfield Public Schools beginning with our next school year. Board Policy IIAA directs that a review of textbooks and instructional resources available to students and teachers for each curriculum content area occurs in cycles not to exceed 7 years. And tonight we bring a proposal for secondary science, grades 6 through 12. Project Lead the Way, both pre-engineering and biomedical programs. The K-12 health, physical education, and driver education programs. I'd like to recognize and thank the many teachers, parents, community members who served on our curriculum development councils, our resource adoption committees during the extensive curriculum development process that has led to this proposal. Attachment A of your action item lists the names of the individuals who participated and contributed to the decisions that we're bringing forward this evening. I'd like to especially acknowledge Mrs. Ann Wallenmeyer and Mrs. Teresa Miller and ask them to stand and be recognized for their important leadership on this. A review of our curriculum development process. It's an extensive process that involves many people and many hours. I'd like to briefly highlight the process for the board and our audience this evening. Last May of 2010, the board received a program evaluation report for secondary science, as well as K-12 health, PE, and driver ed. And then in June 2010, the board received a program evaluation for career and technical education, which includes our Project Lead the Way programming. And in November of 2010, the board approved major instructional goals for all these curricular areas. The process of evaluation and selection of curriculum resources has taken several months this school year. Prior to the proposal tonight, secondary science classroom equipment and other resources, as well as our health, PE, and driver ed equipment, resources, and facilities have been reviewed to evaluate the age and condition. Publishers and other vendors have been invited to submit student and teacher support materials for review and evaluation by the committees. The sample resources were distributed. They were publicly displayed to give teachers, administrators, parents, and community sufficient opportunity to review them. And scheduled curriculum development council meetings throughout the year were devoted to the review of textbooks and instructional materials, and publisher representatives and other vendors made presentations and answered questions. It was a very thorough process. The decision-making process utilized input from teachers at each of our schools, as well as curriculum development council members, including administrators, parents, and district patrons. Following final approval by the board this spring, teachers will begin development of curriculum guides, and it'll take into the summer to complete those, but they will be ready for the first day of school. And the guides will provide specific lessons, activities, instructional strategies, as well as assessment items and instruments to help inform instruction for students, teachers, and parents. Implementation of the adopted curriculum and resources are planned for the 2011-12 school year, and a key part of the implementation of the new resources is the development of ongoing content-specific staff development opportunities for teachers and administrators, which incorporate best instructional practices with content area curriculum. And that takes about 7 years to complete all that. So. We'll begin with 6-12 science. The secondary science adoption includes textbooks and resources. It includes laboratory equipment, and we're budgeting for some additional teacher training, especially related to our Physics First initiative, which we're in the midst of participating in a grant opportunity on that, but there are additional funds necessary. This is a partial adoption. It does not represent every course that is available in secondary science. There were some challenges this year with budget, and so some tough decisions were made. Some priorities were established. In Physics First, the required freshman course is reflected in this. We began that implementation. We're using program dollars, but we are requiring some additional dollars to continue to support Physics First. Our high stakes testing is in our middle school program. We have grade level MAP test in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, so we're recommending resource adoption in those areas. And then our biology, our high school end of course testing is in biology. So we've identified 5 biology courses: our introductory biology, general biology honors, as well as anatomy and physiology and advanced placement biology are included. And then a new program, a new course offering that you approved in November for astronomy. The Project Lead the Way adoption proposal includes laboratory equipment and technology, as well as a slight increase on consumables that are anticipated in both the biomedical and Project Lead the Way Aerospace. It's still a little bit early for principals and staffs to be able to predict exactly what classes we'll make, but we are budgeting for that and anticipating that we'll be able to support the additional pre-engineering program classes that have added, and then implement the Project Lead the Way biomedical program as well. We intend to share resources with some of our science programming, so we'll maximize our resources in that endeavor. The health, physical education, and driver ed adoption proposal includes textbooks and resources. It includes an online resource, which you heard one of our speakers address earlier this evening, as well as some equipment. We're enjoying a partnership opportunity with the Mercy Health System, and our Curriculum Development Council was made aware of this actually last spring. Mercy Health invited a number of civic business leaders and educators to a community roundtable, and at that point they determined that they were going to move forward and make an offer of a resource. This particular resource, again, has been fully reviewed and vetted by the committee, and it is available, I believe, currently in 8,000 schools, utilized by 18,000 teachers. It's been adopted by more than a dozen states and districts as their approved health curriculum. Our CDC identified it as a supplemental resource that they believe will help address specifically national health education standards. You'll recall that we aligned our major instructional goals last November to the national health education standards when we brought those to you and you approved them. So again, this is a great opportunity. There are a number of neighboring districts that have also determined that this resource is appropriate, and so we also are providing textbooks for that particular resource. That online resource is a K-12 resource, as the speaker indicated. We are purchasing 6th, 7th, and 8th grade health textbooks and 9th grade textbooks. At this time, the decision was to delay the adoption of a kindergarten through 5th grade textbook for basically a couple of reasons. One, again, the financial challenges that we're facing, the belief by principals and elementary teachers that their current textbook, especially with the supplemental resources, is appropriate this time, and they want to spend a year reviewing that, and we'll certainly consider a recommendation next spring related to K-5 health textbooks. It also includes textbooks for driver education, and then especially some physical education equipment. We have some situations where we have volleyball standards and wall mats and basketball goals that frankly need to be replaced because they're heavy, and we're concerned about that. They aren't as stable as they need to be. So we're kind of targeting with this adoption some very specific priorities, and we think that this does represent the best adoption that we can bring at this time for the fiscal amount that's been allocated. You'll see that this year that does total to $1,030,000, and so that is our recommendation that you approve these resources, which will be used in classrooms until the year 2018. So it's our recommendation that you approve the recommended instructional resources, materials as presented at a total cost of $1,030,000. This expenditure has been included in the 2011-12 preliminary budget. And just a little bit of information. I shared this with you last year in a March information item, but I just bring it back to you to give you a kind of a frame of reference on that $1,030,000 relative to how the last 9 years or the previous 9 years, and it graphs out like this. So again, the committees were very diligent and very careful to make good choices, physically responsible choices. So this time I'd be happy to answer any questions, or Mrs. Wallenmeyer and Mrs. Miller would also be willing and able to do that.
Questions? Ms. Callan.
I've been reading a lot about how advanced placement is, as an organization, is going through some real changes in looking at how they, what they expect students to know in order to take the AP tests. Does this curriculum that we're adopting reflect those changes that AP has been working through?
I know it does, but I'll let Mrs. Wallmeyer address that specifically.
Currently, if you teach AP classes, you have to have the syllabus of your course approved through AP. So the teachers that worked on the MIGs and objectives and chose the resources are those that have had their syllabi approved through the AP. So they're very aware of those requirements and what's needed. We also made sure to check the list of resources that AP will accept when we chose textbooks to make sure that the textbooks we're choosing were on that list.
Because it's my understanding they're going away, particularly in AP biology, which apparently, probably Dr. Frederick can address this, but was very, in terms of the quantity of material that students and teachers had to get through to get, to be proficient on the test. And then they were finding that that really wasn't translating into success, when this is what we were talking about earlier, in college, equivalent kinds of college classes. So we are going to be also revising the way that we teach our AP science classes.
The biology in particular?
Well, that this article was in the New York Times and it was highlighting a bunch of changes, but I think they're going to start with biology, it sounded like. Okay.
Yep.
Well, not anymore.
This is more 2018. I assume nothing's going to change between now and 2018, right?
In science.
Is that what you're going to? That's what you're telling me?
We have a
And
great staff.
I'm being facetious.
We do have a great staff, and clearly, it's an ongoing process of utilizing resources and trying to maximize, their life. But yes, I wanted to make the point that we are on a 7-year cycle, and even in lean times, the board has made some decisions to continue to support those, and but because to delay it even further makes it really challenging.
My concern's going the other way.
Pardon me?
I think that's too long.
Yes, I understand your point.
I think 7 years is way too long on, particularly on science and mathematics and some of those but that's opinion.
Well, the e-books now are adjusted every year. In other words, you buy the e-book, and we're not there yet, but you buy the e-book and there's automatic adjustments every year. And so it's just an ongoing adjustment, whereas when you buy a textbook, hardbound, you're stuck for 7 years, yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Wallmeyer, this question is for you. If you could just give us an estimate of how many additional hours that a teacher or staff put into this process. Do you kind of have an idea?
We had about 18 hours after school hours that teachers had available and parents and community members had available to come and look at resources and review them. We had 71 people that ended up coming at some point in time during those 18 hours to review those.
And I understand the process 7 years ago was phenomenal, was it? Okay.
I think you've done a great job.
And I would take a motion. Maybe you should make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
A second?
Second.
Mrs. Callen, that the Board of Education approve the recommended instructional resource materials as presented for a total cost of $1,030,000. Expenditure is included in the 2011-2012 preliminary budget. Mr. Lee?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for the presentation and your work. Right, where am I here?
Engineering.
Engineering, Dr. Ritter, Mr. Chodes,
Mr. Chodes. Mr. Wendt.
Good evening again. This item before you now is the action item for the Roundtree Elementary Air Conditioning Project. We advertised it in the beginning of March. We opened the bids on April 6th. The bid tabulation is attached. We had 4 bidders on the project. The lowest responsible bid is highlighted in bold and underlined, and that was from Bales Construction. Our anticipated construction cost that we were looking at was $1,035,000. In that range, it's just a little above that. It is within the contingency that we had planned for the project. It is to be funded from the 2009 bond funds, and it is administration's recommendation that the board accepts the bid of $1,282,800 from Bales Construction for the Roundtree Elementary Air Conditioning Project.
What was the anticipated again?
$1,035,000.
Other questions? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart. Second from Mr. Renner, that the board accept the bid of $1,282,800 from Bales Construction for the Roundtree Elementary Air Conditioning Project. Mr. Renner?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Chodes, I think you're the only one we haven't heard from tonight.
Thank you. If you would please open up the PDF file for this item and turn to page 2, you'll see the financial statement for the month of March. Starting at the top, property taxes. The combined county current and delinquent tax collections were down $200,000 from last March's collections. However, you'll see that in the percent of budget column that we're at 100.30%, so I can say with certainty that we will exceed this year's budget on the property taxes. Total revenue year-to-date is 87% of budget, whereas last year was, at this time, was 83% of the year-end numbers, so that's in the positive direction, as is the total expenditures, which are 61% of the total budget, whereas this time last year they were 63% of the year-end numbers. One thing I would like to point out that I thought was a little interesting was total employee costs this year are 61.66% of total budget, and last year at this time they were 61.63% of the year-end numbers, so we're tracking pretty darn close there. And it's my intent to give the board an update on projections at the budget work session. And this does, you know, the $3.5 million is, we're still on track for that. Questions?
And the latest word from the state on the foundation formula appears to be that status quo.
Well, they did recently accept the Education Jobs Fund, which is great news. I guess the filibuster 4 or whatever decided not to filibuster. So,
Mrs. Twitty.
Just in referencing the budget study session, can we talk a little bit about that now?
We'll do that.
we can. I think we're going to do that in future
issues.
Future issues.
We could do that now if you want.
Well, I just, you're going to give us those updates, and I think there was some question as to whether or not we were going to be meeting.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk
Right,
later.
we will.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Take a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty, in a second.
Second.
Mr. Renner, that the board approve the treasurer's report as presented. Mr. Renner.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Routine action items. If there are no changes, we can take a motion to approve each of the routine action items as submitted.
So moved.
Mr. Lee.
Second.
Mr. Renner, thank you. Mr. Lee.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Now we have time allotted for comments on items not related to the printed agenda items. These comments will be limited to 3 minutes for each speaker and timed. Just a reminder, it's inappropriate to address the board about individual students or staff members by name in an open meeting, and if you have concerns about individuals, they should be addressed to the appropriate administrative supervisors in the schools or the office. I think Mr. Hurd has comments.
Board President and members of the board and Dr. Ritter, greetings. I want to thank you for listening and for being a leader in this new civility phenomenon. And I also want to say congratulations to Dr. Frederick and Dr. Prater for your new positions. Just a little thought, kind of a lesson on humility. 85%, yes, 85% of the registered voters did not vote for any of us. So what I really wanted to talk about was the budget, and I expected it to be on the agenda tonight because time is drawing pretty close. So if it's 3 minutes, I guess it's 3 minutes. I'll get as far as I can, and we will continue perhaps at a later date. I'm going to ask you a question that requires your complete and truthful answer. And just as a note, after last Saturday's News and Leader article, the district really can't afford any more negative publicity. Question: how many tax dollars are paid by R12 to the Chamber of Commerce for yearly dues? If the answer is any amount, whether it's $100 or $6,700, it's too much. The Chamber of Commerce should step up to the plate and be a true partner in education. You as a board cannot waste any tax dollars, large or small amounts. The reason this question is so important is Dr. Ritter has been asked that question and he avoided a direct answer. So I'm asking you as a board that question. My second point, and if I run out of time, just let me know, is R12 graduating too many students who cannot pass a college entrance exam, a little beyond the graduation rate. Therefore, they're required to enroll in remedial math and English. Is R12 offering too many course selections? I counted over 225 course selections, not counting the IB selections or counting the OTC courses. It takes 25 units to graduate, of course. In the New Horizons, refer you to page 27, a course selection. American Baseball History, 1839 to present. Now there's a course
I think that was your time.
that's really helping our students, prepare for life skills. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And to be continued.
Let's go on to legislative report. I think a couple things are worth talking about, and I know some of you participated with Senator McCaskill today in a symposium. Mr. Lee, you're on the panel. You want to update us on that?
Well, we had an opportunity to participate in one of Senator McCaskill's, I think, 15 education roundtables that she's conducting across the state during this week, and had a great panel discussion, had great panel members on there. I am amazed every time we have teachers speak of the quality of teachers that we have and present themselves in something in a forum like today. It was really, really impressive listening to our teachers talk about issues and talk about things that they deal with every day in the classroom. But I thought it went really well. I thought we had an opportunity to talk about the new Elementary and Secondary Education Act one thing I heard her say, and obviously she's one person, was NCOB's gone. That was the comment. That got a little bit of applause. And I hope she's right. But, that's yet to be seen. We'll see what happens. But I thought it was a good opportunity to give her some input, and I think she went away with some ideas and thoughts about what we could do, what we should do, or what the federal government shouldn't do with respect to some of that. One of the concerns I've got a little bit is the line between the federal government and the state government is getting blurrier and blurrier every day. And that concerns me a little bit. That's a philosophical editorial comment, but I thought it was an opportunity for us to be able to make a step. The parents did great, provided some great input to their perspective of education in this community. So I thought it went really well. I think she was extremely pleased with the results and the information that she was getting. She knows something about Springfield School Districts just from conversations before, and so I think we put our best foot forward today talking about the issue of NCLB and its reauthorization. So I don't know if anybody else was there, but I thought it was extremely productive meeting. Now, how far it goes, I think the comments were made and the input was heard. We'll see how far that goes.
I was impressed with Chase.
I heard the high school student performed well.
Blew everybody away.
Any other comments on that today? I had a very brief conversation with Senator Blunt on Friday and basically talked about NCLB, and he said, what do we need to do in Washington? And I said, well, essentially get out of the way. Yeah, and that NCLB is a huge problem, and he reiterated his agreement in that and said keep him posted. Anything else in Jefferson City, legislative issue-wise?
I think they voted on charter today, if I may, and I think the charter language in the Senate has been adjusted to where they have to report to the local school board, including Kansas City and St. Louis. So it's really good that alignment is in place now. Well, I don't know, it needs to go through the ranks.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there was a lot of, they were really, let's put it this way, they were listening to us in that whole scenario, so it was part of it. Other than that, yeah, a lot of shaking, but not much coming through.
Not much happening.
And I don't know if this is really legislative, but it's close, and that's MSIP 5. And I'm glad that the commissioner had the wisdom to pull that, because there were some real issues in MSIP 5. I think when the Education Roundtable agrees, which is the school boards, the administrators, the 3 different teacher groups, I think PTAs included.
PTAs,
and so when they can't, if they don't unanimously agree, then they can't address an issue. So I would say when those groups all come together and say there's a problem, somebody needs to step back and look at that. And just some issues that were there, we just talked to Senator McCaskill about all the testing that MSIP 5 has massive types of testing to get to accountability, and that's about the only thing that was there. So I think that had some issues, and it never dealt really with students with disabilities. And according to IDEA, if you're going to test somebody, you have to have an alternate assessment available for those students with disabilities, and never addressed any of those. So I think it would have been a complete disaster as you started doing that and nobody recognized the fact you don't have an alternate assessment already for those students that have been identified with disabilities. So there are a lot of things there, and I know I hope we stay in touch with MSBA, because I know they're really driving some of those things, and that we get active with that, because I think it's going to be brought back in the fall, if I'm not mistaken, is their kind of their plan. And I hope it's just not, oh, we'll wait and then we'll still roll out the same plan.
I'd follow up to that a little bit. I hope it does. I know it's just a recommendation from the commissioner. The board still has to approve it tomorrow, the state board. We'll see if that happens.
I'm curious.
and who knows what'll happen, but they have to approve it. I know there's some that would like to see it just go right on through as is. So, that'll be an interesting result tomorrow, and I hope that happens. But had an opportunity to meet with the commissioner Saturday and ask a lot of the questions that's been brought up, and it helped a lot, explain some of the things. I mean, we got into the, why do all kids have to take physics? And it really got into some terminology that the information's not out there. I mean, there's some things in there that's just horrendous, absolutely. But a lot of the questions that are out there that we didn't have answers for are beginning to come out, and MSBA is leading the way on that and really making that happen to get the information out. So I think it's going to happen as far as it being stopped, and getting the input from hopefully a lot of stakeholders. I think they need to get their house all in order and get some input from. They're going to put together, I hope, a task force of an even number of people from all stakeholders involved, parents, board members, administrators. Last time they did it, it was pretty much all administrators that did it. And so I think they're going to balance that out a little bit. So we may even have opportunities to be at the table. I don't know. So that I'm more optimistic than I was beforehand, but there's still a long way to go to get to something that MSIP is acceptable. I mean, we have to do something, and I think it's one of the things. One of the efforts that's going on now is the whole issue with the top 10 by 20, which is not exactly the same thing, but I know people are really nervous about 10 by 20. If you do that one, does that mean MSIP? You're going to take that, and there's something separate. So DESI's got some selling to do on the vision first, and get people to buy off on the vision, and then putting some of the details behind it, and they're not there yet either. And 10 by 20 is a great thing. The devil's in the details on some of it, but if they don't sell the vision, a lot of the rest of the stuff is kind of a wasted effort. So we'll see. I'm optimistic, but there's a long way, and there's a lot of stuff in that MSIP 5. If you all haven't looked at it, you ought to look at it. Some of the differences between 5 and 4.
Thanks for keeping us posted. Future issues. This addresses Mrs. Twitty's question about our budget meeting. I understand we're not going to be ready for a budget meeting, which we'd initially talked about maybe on the 21st.
Right.
And that the hope would be to do that May 10th?
Yes. We're looking at, first of all, there's still uncertainty around the state, but not as much. We still need to see where the numbers are going to fall. The same thing with federal government. We're not quite sure, well, the slashing when it's all done, what that's going to look like. And then also the last thing is, we had the collective bargaining conversations going on too. So we have all those different things that's uncertain. So we need to kind of let that settle. Hopefully we'll have a lot more information by the 10th.
Day of the week is that?
I'm sorry?
Is that a Tuesday?
That's a
Are we
Tuesday.
talking about regular meeting time?
Well, we were thinking 4 o'clock, if that would work for people.
That's one thing to find
Or
out about tonight.
5:30.
Can somebody find out when Night of Honors is at?
Sorry?
I believe that might be Night of Honors
Oh, it is?
at Central. I don't know, is there
Why
a
don't
way
we
somebody can find that out?
let Mrs. Luton send out a memo
Okay, and we'll
to
check.
everybody, and let's get our times back to her.
Okay.
Now, if it was at 4, we'd
Yeah.
be out, but I think, I just got a correspondence as a parent, and I think some of those activities start at 5 that night. I'm
No, we need
pretty
to
sure
stay
it's-
away from it if that's the case.
What were the 3 pieces again that are holding us up?
The state,
Bargaining and
federal,
state.
and then also collective bargaining.
What's the biggest piece?
Collective bargaining.
So if we look at the calendar, I'm going to kind of walk you guys through the potential calendar for the next couple months. April 26th is the MSBA regional meeting, and I think Mrs. Cowell and Dr. Frederick are going to that to represent us. Thank you very much. And Dr. Ritter, of course, and Mr. Lee will be representing MSBA at another regional meeting. So that puts a board meeting on May 3rd, and then a potential budget meeting on May 10th, and then the next board meeting on graduation the next week, 16th and 17th, and the next board meeting on May 24th. 24th, and I will be out of town May 24th.
I guess I'll be here.
You'll be here?
We may need to have a special meeting, as Mr. Wendt mentioned, in early June to help
Okay.
us move forward with Boyd.
Right, then let's go toward June. I know, Dr. Ritter, you're out of town the 7th and the 14th.
Right.
And I think Mrs. Twitty and I may be out of town both on the 21st. And so that would be, did I get the rumor right?
Well,
Okay. So I'm throwing out a potential board meeting date of June for a combined meeting on the 28th. So just keep kind of.
Oh, the 28th
Of June. So kind of keep these in your calendar. We'll have Mrs. Luton send it all out. But we may need a special board meeting at some time during the first or second week of June, which I guess could be done in the superintendent's absence if need be.
We'll try to get it before I leave.
Okay.
We will get it before we leave.
Okay. And you'll let us know on that.
could I ask in general, though, once we set meetings for the year, because a lot of
Yep.
us do plan
Yep.
our vacations around those meetings or other things, and so to change things midstream really does throw our family schedules off, so.
The one we changed was I think the 7th, or the
14th.
7th or the 14th, yeah, the 14th.
14th.
28th was set, and then in July, we have one, I don't think we've ever,
It's a joint.
One meeting in June.
the joint meeting in July on the 12th. And then potential of a summer retreat if needed on the 26th. So if you'll scour
that out.
your calendars for Mrs. Luton's memo, and we'll,
This will be interesting. This is
go
like
from there.
gathering cats plus
Yeah.
ants.
And then over the next month, we'll try to get a 2011, 2012 calendar out to everybody with the attempt to minimize changes. Okay, clear as mud. Any future issues, any other future, yeah, Ms. Cowan?
One of the things that came up during Senator McCaskill's discussion with us, she asked a lot about teacher evaluations, and it really got me thinking that this is a topic that has been brought up to me by several patrons over the years, and I think we are poised to be kind of on the cutting edge of doing some unique things here in Springfield. And if we do have a summer retreat, I was wondering if one of the topics might be not just teacher evaluations, but how, as a system, we look at all the different components. Teacher evaluation, student evaluation, and students, being able to evaluate teachers, parents being able to evaluate administrators and teachers, but also teachers being able to give feedback back to parents about how they could have been, or how they were supportive of what happened, or how they could have been more supportive, and just really look kind of at that 360. I think we've done a really good job over the last few years of looking at how we get patron input and being much more strategic and deliberate in using that data. And I think we're a district, the size would be helpful for other districts to see how we did it. And I also think we're healthy enough to be able to implement these kinds of, cross-evaluations, so.
I think the atmosphere is there, the state audit, we have the annual audits, we have the system audit that we did in '09. And also in CCI buildings, that type of evaluation is expected. So I think the atmosphere's there, and I'd like to see that drive our system more than No Child Left Behind.
Yeah, I would agree with Ms. Callan on, I think we can take a leading edge on that and prevent or circumvent having it being forced upon us of something that doesn't make any sense. I think we can be a state leader in that and working with all the groups to do that, and even working with MSBA some to make that work, and getting help there would be advantageous. But yeah, I think we can be a leader in that, and then let the legislators follow what works, not what they have in their mind it ought to be.
Like they're trying now.
Like they're trying now.
Right, and I think, I mean, you just see, and I think particularly, teachers, you know, or staff, because they're the employees, are being targeted for the evaluative piece, but if we can look at that as being, like we've done with a lot of other things, as being, you know, data that helps us all, and how that teacher piece fits into everything that we do isn't just isolated. I think that, I don't know, I'm excited about what we could do.
Well, we would have the right motive to do teacher evaluation, and that is how can we be best for kids, which isn't the motive that's happening now for teacher evaluations at the state level and the federal level. It's punitive process, not how can we be positive about this and be productive to the district and the kids.
Well, and we also know that parent involvement is a huge piece of student success, and if we don't find a way to help our parents be better advocates for their students, then I think we're missing the boat.
I would like to really compliment Dr. Riggs and her team and their response to Diana Robertson's passing. I thought it was just exceptional. This community loves its educators. This community loves its schools, and really we're all at the table at one time. And when someone passes like that, that's really precious. It's just tremendous how strong that support is. You saw that with Stephanie Phillips. You see that with Diana, and so I just thought it was just really wonderful. And I really think that's the testimony as much as the data related to test is the testimony. I think it's just a sign of some real, what I would call real strong health and wellness. And so it's something that the operations, really the whole system needs to be complimented on that. So I wanted to bring that up to kind of close the meeting.
Thank
if
you.
I'm okay.
Any other issues? Remember, the financial and operations report is in board docs. Do your plus deltas, and I need a motion to go into executive session following the meeting to discuss legal and personnel matters as provided in section 610.02113 and 13 RSMO. Mrs. Twitty.
Second.
Second, Mr. Renner. Mr. Lee.
Aye.
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 Aye.